guys, welcome to Phoenix Flight Manual. I'm Kesi Afiya. So this video I'm making to give you a little insight as to what it's like being psychic, which obviously I'm giving you my own experience. It's different for everybody, just like everything else. And so I feel like there's a lot of like lack of knowledge around what being psychic is, what it's like. I think it's so shrouded in mystery that a lot of people don't know that it exists in a real way. Like, I feel like outside of Hollywood concepts, or people that you might see on TV, like Tyler Henry, who I love, by the way. But yeah, I feel like there's basically like a Hollywood version of this, and I want to give you the real human experience of that, to like humanize the experience, so it's not this kind of scary slash weird unknown kind of thing. I'm sure many people have gone, to a psychic, even a street fair or something where, they do a tarot reading or a palm reading or something like that, and kind of like kooky fun, nothing serious. And I've actually never done that, interestingly enough. And from what I've heard, I get this sense that it's very like hit or miss. So I don't know anyone who does it, but I do feel like if you have done it, what your idea of what a psychic is might be a little bit different to what I'm going to share. So this is a video that I have been called to make and share for quite some time. And it's been really, really hard for me to make, actually. I've only recently just like announced and come out to my family and my friends as psychic. Not like even all my friends got the memo, to be honest. I shared it at my birthday, so those who were able to attend got the memo, and those who weren't are gonna eventually somehow. I mean, it's on the channel, it's not a secret. So yeah, basically I'm just getting to a point where I'm sharing this. It's something that I've felt really pushed to do. I wouldn't even say called, pushed and pushed and pushed. And the resistance has not been a mystery. Other psychics that I've spoken with and connected with all say the same thing. They all have memories of basically like the witch hunts kind of thing. So whether in that time period or some other way, that nature of things, of like, kill it, get it, hurt it. And so that energy is present for people who are super sensitive to energy and psychics, and that is basically like an energetic thread or an energetic trail that has carried through from our soul's experience of it time and again. If you do not believe in reincarnation, you will not be able to appreciate this, but reincarnation is 100% a thing. The details of it that's not what this video is about, but our souls are eternal. So we're not just chilling for like billions of years. We're actually engaged on a soul level, and so sometimes that looks like being incarnated as a human being, and we're not likely to do that just once. You know, the whole evolution of things is a pattern. So we're kind of reliving the same life over and over again in different ways, kind of. Even if we're incarnated as a male or female or this or that or whatever, we're the same soul having the same journey. It's the same journey. It's a continuation of. And so with that, if you are psychic, you can pick up on all that stuff. Depending on how, you know, open you are to receiving all of that and tapping into it and activating it and everything like that. If you have any blocks around that, which are thought patterns really, that's what will block your intuition more than anything. So yeah, that's where it's going to start. Why now? Besides the fact that Spirit, God, Source, the Divine, been pushing me to make this video. I just finished watching, oh gosh, what is that movie even called? I can't think of it right now, actually, funnily enough, but it's about Hypatia and the Library of Alexandria and the downfall. And I watched it for the first time years ago, and I remember just having this really intense experience watching it, like connecting with the events that happened. Especially, I have to say, there's like this scene where they're trying to storm the library. They have the big like old school gates shut with the like wooden whatchamacallit, and they're like knocking on it, and they're trying to get in and storm the library and trash it. And so they're all like desperately trying to save all this information, and it is abundant. If you don't know, the Library of Alexandria was one of the most comprehensive libraries in the world at the time. So it was holding an enormous amount of information. It's not like there were backups. This was like 360 AD, you know, around that time. And so when they did eventually storm the library and destroy all that information, it was just so much, just devastating. And so I remember that scene where they're just desperately trying to get all the scrolls and get them out of the library before they come trash everything. And I just really connected with that, and I just felt like I remembered what that was like, and it was awful. By the way, it was devastating. Like, the amount of information, that is how we grow and evolve as a human race. So many things that we understand now is only because the person before us figured something out, because the person before them figured something out, etc., etc. So we're building on what people have already uncovered. So when large bodies of information like that are destroyed, it actually sets the human race back a ways. And Hypatia is a really good example of that. She was a philosopher, she was an astronomer, and she was a teacher at the Neoplatonic school in Alexandria. And the classes were held at the library, and so she basically was just very progressive, and she was very intelligent. She was renowned for her studies and developments and discoveries in astronomy, and she was a well-respected philosopher, and she was a woman. And she lived at a time where there was a great shift happening in that area, from paganism to Christianity. And so through the pagan dynamic, she was allowed to hold that place in society and to share all of these wonderful, amazing, very important things that she was uncovering, because she was allowed to study and she was allowed to work in this field. But through the politics of it all, she was actually accused of being a witch and a heretic. Some of the astrological concepts she was investigating and developing was the ticket that they used to label her with that. And she was basically just trying to figure out why the sun seemed closer in summer and further away in winter. And so through this process of trying to figure that out, she was asking all kinds of questions that challenged the belief systems beyond even this religious debate. Beyond that, the concept she was looking into was the actual functionality of reality, of the universe. And so basically, the reason why I'm bringing her up and her experience is because the energy thread that I'm talking about is that of being attacked, like, and oppressed, and like, it's not even ostracized, because you're not even pushed out, you're crushed. And basically, she was a really well-respected person in society. They were able to, just by calling her a witch and a heretic, they then had the go-ahead to mutilate her. They dragged her mutilated corpse through the city for days. I mean, all because she was trying to further mankind, really. But it wasn't so much that. As she was challenging concepts, she had a very strong voice and she was powerful, and they did not appreciate that. So, some of the things that psychics who are quite sensitive or pick up a lot of information um, are getting is the kind of information that really can get very nasty reactions from people, because it does challenge very large concepts, religious concepts, concepts of how reality works. And the other aspect of it is, well, who are you to say that? So as a psychic, as a channel, as someone who has this kind of information coming through to them, it's kind of a tricky position to be in. You have this whole view of this whole other aspect of reality. And basically your job is to use this ability to see this other aspect of reality to basically be in service of the divine. It's a divine gift with a mission statement on it. So that's the other tricky part of it. I feel like that's something that's not well known about psychics, but I've never met a psychic, I don't know of a psychic, I don't believe it exists, who does not have a strong relationship with the divine, in whatever name they give it. Many psychics I know of, they're Christian. So I feel like one of the greatest misconceptions about being psychic is that it is like the Antichrist, or in some way dark. It has no connection to that, except for the fact that everything in reality has light and dark. Psychics are very, very aware of that. That whole hidden aspect of reality, you see that very clearly in a way that you have another level of understanding of the purpose of good and bad. So you don't just see it as, yay, no. There's a purpose for both. So yeah, I was just watching this movie, and there was a scene in it where basically some of her students that she taught are now grown up, and they're the leaders of society, and they're under pressure to get her to convert to Christianity, and she won't do it. She's a pagan. So this is Egypt, like Roman Egypt. So it's a part of the Roman Empire at this time, and she's like of Roman descent. And at that time, like I said, it was the crossover. So they were trying to get her to convert, and she stood up for her faith, knowing that it would be the end of her. And it really got to me, because this was like 1600 years ago. 1600 years ago, this woman had this experience. And 1600 years later, there's still a great fear of doing what she did. I don't have a fear that I'm gonna, be put to death and have my body mutilated and dragged through the city, but there's a great fear. Fear of how people will react, fear of attack. You know, I've watched people go before me. Actually, I remember years ago, Teal Swan, if you're familiar with her. If not, you should check her out on YouTube, Teal Swan. I was a teenager at the time, and I remember seeing her on TV talking about some of these types of things, like the hidden reality. And I was just like, oh my God, this woman is talking about all these things, because I knew that I was psychic, but I didn't have that term for it. I thought psychic was clairvoyant, wholly, solely, and just a whole different thing. I had just a whole nother idea of what psychic was. And so I'm like listening to her and watching her on the TV, and I was just like, oh my God, like she's saying these things that I know, like, that come through for me that nobody else seems to know or understand. She's saying it. It's kind of like that point in a ghost movie where they're like, you can see me, you know? And then I was like, is she crazy? Does she know that they're gonna like totally come after her? I'm sure she did, obviously. And they did come after her. They called her a witch, they called her crazy, they called her a liar. It was rough. I watched it over years. If you check her out now, I think it'll be like way over 10 years later. Or maybe not. Like, how old am I? So not quite 10 years. And she's like, she just held her own. And she's leading a movement in a really powerful, huge way, helping just like probably hundreds of thousands, if not more, people, probably millions, since she has her channel, so that goes far. And but they came for her for years. I'm sure there's still people coming for her, but especially to begin with. And like, she was one of the only people I knew out in the world talking about this kind of stuff. And I mean, it's hard, you know, with no other like people out there with you. Yeah, it's really powerful resistance, and because it makes sense. You don't want to do that to yourself. But yeah, so what it's like being psychic, you pick up energies, 1600-year-old energies, as powerful as your own experience now today. It's the same thing. So it's not like I'm going back in time. It's a thread. That energy's traveled all the way through time. If you think there was one single moment on this planet that there was a woman not going through this, like in essence, you're crazy. So as long as someone's having that experience, that energy travels through time from generation to generation. Energy is not bound to form. So that's how we get things from our parents and ancestors and things like that, like natural skills that we, you know, just had going into things, you know, and an amazing ability to sing or play sports or whatever, and it's come through that energetic thread of the family line. Even a bad temper or, you know, something like that. Great sense of humor, all, you know, that kind of stuff travels through. Fortitude, people who just come from a long line of people who just real strong and tough, all that kind of thing. And the interesting thing about her too is that although she was pagan, she was monistic in faith, which means she believed in source. You may have heard that as a term that is pretty popular in New Age spirituality. Source, the source of all creation, source of life. She believed in that. That Christianity is monistic. So the Christians who put her to death in such an awful way for being, you know, not of their faith, it was just an absolute play to put her down, to execute her, and basically put out her light, put out that fire. Here's the thing with that. The work that she was doing, she was on the verge of many breakthroughs and discoveries. You know, she was like obsessed with her work. She was exploring some concepts that were quite advanced for her time. And when the library was overthrown, and because of the position that they put her in, they destroyed her works after her death. And it was 1,200 years later before somebody else picked up where she left off, like could get it. You want to talk about ahead of your time? 1,200 years ahead of your time. Like that's the kind of reality a psychic lives in. You have a living knowledge of this aspect of reality, amongst many other things. But it definitely gives you a different perspective. It definitely changes how you choose in life. And so I've chosen to keep this to myself because of everything that I'm sharing with you. You know, the fear of the witch hunt. That's what it's all about. And the sad thing is that it's completely dependent upon a strong connection with the divine. So, all that being said, that's what got me to finally do this video. So my experience. I wanted to give a little insight too of my broad and basic understanding and position on what being psychic is. First of all, we all have psychic abilities. All of us. We have experienced them, we've used them, often not, you know, unawares. People always use that example of when you know someone's gonna call and then they do, or, you know, things like that. But it's also just like when you can sense things going on with people. It's if you have a really keen, you know, just gut, I just trust my gut. Also channeling. A lot of people channel. And channeling is where you basically get out of the way and let God kind of come through you. And that's the thing, I think also when we use the word God, divine, things like that, we have such a like superior, high and mighty view of it. But like literally everything exists as, you know, a product or byproduct of God. And, you know, if not just via us, it's still coming from the divine. And so that's rock and roll. That's art. That's science. That's right. All those scientific breakthroughs, that's the divine. For all the people who think that there's actually a split between science and religion, well, actually, can't speak for religion, but divinity, there's no split there. And so I was kind of thinking about, like, well then, you know, where's that line, that invisible line between an average person with their average psychic abilities and a psychic? How active it is, for one, that's really basically the biggest difference. I think it's definitely possible for people to, develop their psychic abilities from average to profound within a lifetime easily. I actually think that I've been pushed to make this video to kind of help anyone who does want to do that. To help open minds of people who want to do that and don't know it yet. But yeah, the view that I think is most helpful is, so I follow a teacher, a guru named Sadhguru. Also recommend you looking him up on YouTube. And his definition of enlightenment really lends itself well to understanding what it's like being psychic. So I'm totally condensing this and paraphrasing, but his explanation of enlightenment was like breaking dawn. So say you're standing outside somewhere and it's pitch black. You can't really see anything. Well, it's not pitch black. It's, pre-dawn. So it's super dark though. So you're in a forest. And if you were to look around, what can you really see? Not a hell of a lot. That's why it's scary at night. You can't see anything. And you get unsure about what to do. And so you're if you're just alone by yourself in a forest, you don't know, you're probably going to be a little freaked out. And then imagine the sunrise. And so basically he was saying it doesn't make any sense to think of it or call it breaking dawn. He said you're breaking night because it's the light that's breaking through. And as it breaks through, little bit by little bit, it starts to illuminate your surroundings, and then you understand and you can see what's going on, and you're able to, or you feel more able to move around to where you're trying to go. Avoid, ooh, don't step on that rock. Ooh, be careful over there, because you can see where you're going. So that was his definition of enlightenment, and it connects well to being psychic because my experience of being psychic is like that. You're aware of a lot of what's around you, and it's around all of us. It's just some people, the lights turned up. I wouldn't say all the way on. Heck no. There's a lot of bumping around in the dark for me, but it's turned up. I can see a lot. Often I've seen a hell of a lot more than I ever wanted to. I think it's pretty common for people to, you know, try and block it out with different things. I definitely tried that for a lot of years because it's a lot. It's very overwhelming and you can't turn it off. So anyone who is thinking about developing their psychic abilities, do know that. You can't turn it down, you can't dial it back, you can't switch it off. So it's just the only way is up. And so for me, my experience, I was aware that I was psychic from very early on, like 5 years old. I did not have that term or label for it. In fact, I was raised Christian. I was raised Rastafarian, which many people don't know is actually a Christian religion. And the closest thing I knew to what I was prophet. Even though I didn't feel like that's what I was, like in the way that they talked about it in the Bible, but it was the closest term, concept, or word that I had, because I knew that God was talking to me all the time, and not just talking to me, but and not just guiding me either. It was like he was getting me ready for something. And this is like at 5 years old, and I was like, awesome, cool, like this is, in my 5-year-old mind, I'm like, whatever you got planned, I'm sure it's going to be awesome. I'm on board. It wasn't awesome. It was not awesome. It's gonna be, but it wasn't. And so, I remember telling my father that I was a prophet. And obviously, well, not obviously, but he laughed. You know, he was like, you know, kids say the darndest things. And that was the only time I ever really mentioned it to anyone in that kind of way of like, I'm different. And I actually just remember being really confused by people when I was little. Like very, 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 very confused. Like they were alien to me. Not thinking I'm the alien. That's the funny part. Is like, I talk to and hear, you know, from a lot of other psychics, like they always felt like the alien. That came later for me, like high school time, but no, I always felt like everybody else was the alien. I was like, I'm the only normal person in the world. What's wrong with everybody? That, honestly, I have the clearest memories. And granted, I was only little, you know, I was like 5. But I do remember that very clearly, just being like, how can I just be the only, like, normal person? What's wrong with everybody else? I don't understand what's wrong with everybody else. And so this used to perplex me a lot, and I'm a very curious person. And so I always had this ongoing dialogue with God, and we would just talk back and forth, and it wasn't like a disembodied voice. It was it's just like telepathy. So the best way I can kind of explain it is if like you're having a conversation with somebody, like if we were having a conversation and you said something to me, like, what's your favorite type of weather? Oh, I love summer rain. And that moment after I've just told you I love summer rain, and you just received that information, it's like getting to that moment without hearing it. So that's the best way I can explain it. And so I would just talk all the time. I didn't know that this was not a thing that people did. I thought literally everyone did this. I really, honestly, I feel like I feel like only recently started to get a true awareness of how much that's not a thing for people. And so, yeah, I didn't know that wasn't a thing. So I used to do it all the time. It's very actively in communication with divine. And I was very curious and I was always asking questions and I was always trying to figure everything out. And I remember asking God, I was just like, basically, what is wrong with people? I just can't figure them out. They're like, I don't understand why people do the things that they do. Basically, in that moment, I feel like that activated my empathic ability, and I was too young to know the Pandora's box I was opening on that one. So being empathic, that is where you are experiencing energy, light, sound, everything like that on a sensual level. Emotions, thoughts, all kinds of energy from everyone and everything. I feel like a lot of people think that's just from person to person. No, it's animals, it's places. Like a certain park will have a certain energy, a certain beach will have a certain energy, a building, a church, a train station. A lot of energy in train stations. And so this is quite a lot. Again, I did not know this was not happening for other people. I just assumed everyone, because it's not, we don't often get into depth of our sensual experience of everyday life culturally. Generally, we, talk about that when it's in extreme states, extreme states of joy, happiness, or, oh, wasn't it such a beautiful day at the beach and it felt so good with the sun on my skin. Like getting into description of what your experience, your sensual experience was of anything that we're all experienced together. It doesn't happen that much for just normal everyday things. So I didn't know, for example, that other people weren't picking up vibes off of other people. I just thought that's something that just everyone did. I'm trying to think of like examples, but like yeah, I feel like the easiest one is like places. So if like for me, going into places with my family and picking up energy off of certain buildings or things that we were entering for whatever reason, a theater or a government office where we had to, get our passports or whatever, the doctor's office, anything. I was always picking up a lot of energy off of that. And it's not like we're talking about that. Like, what is the vibe that you're getting from this place? Well, it feels really like we don't talk like that. So I just assumed everybody else was having that same experience. Relationships. Well, so that's been interesting. Growing up, being empathic affected my relationships a lot, because again, I was very confused, because although I did have my empathic abilities active, I'm not a mind reader. So that was even more confusing. A lot of times people, most of the time, most of the time, people do not act on their emotions. They act from, it's mind over heart. And so if you're really picking up what's going on for a person in their heart and they're doing something that goes against that, it's very confusing, especially when you're young. Like, I can remember my mother, one of her really good friends who was like a friend of the family, she was over for tea, morning tea, tea and biscuits, and she was complaining about her job and she was complaining about her man. And I was little, I must have been like 5 or 6. And I remember just kind of like getting energy from God of like this understanding, this processing of me as a kid trying to figure out everything in life. That's what you do when you're a kid. This is just one more thing. I was like, this is very peculiar. Why is she like complaining about this stuff like she doesn't have a choice? She's choosing to work there. She's choosing this dude. Why would she be choosing that? And so then I remember a channeled message coming through, and I can't remember what I said, but even I knew that was some profound stuff, because when you have like a profound channeled message come through, that wasn't you. And you're like, oh dang, where did that come from? What was it? And they kind of dismissed it because kids say the darndest things. You don't take kids seriously. Most people don't anyhow. I do, because I know. I forgot how I got there. But right, like the energy that I'm picking up through that, it was just very confusing to me. Like, obviously you don't like your job. You feel like I was not just getting the energy of I don't like it, the more complex understanding of what was not working for her about it. She, wanted to do a job that was more fun. She wanted to do a job where she was more respected. I think she was like a secretary there, and you can just imagine the misogyny. And she wanted to move, probably. She lived, it's where our capital is for politics. It's awful in Australia. That's where I grew up. And all the energy around this guy who's just obviously does not give a fuck. Like a relationship of convenience, like rather be with you than be by myself kind of situation. I was just a little kid. I don't know about these relationship dynamics and stuff, but I knew, now I know, because I picked it up off of her. And yeah, it's really confusing. Why, if you feel like this, are you choosing to come here and complain to my mother about it instead of just quitting your job, getting a different job, dumping your boyfriend and getting a different boyfriend? Obviously, I came to understand these things a lot better in time. But this is basically the beginning of what it's like to be psychic, to have a very different experience of reality. And this is just from a young age. As I got older, basically it's kind of like a funnel, and the funnel kept getting bigger and bigger, and more stuff's coming through and more stuff's coming through. And as I got older, that became much more difficult for me, because as you get older, you have more, life circumstances. Like going to high school, what a shit show. I can't even tell you how much awful things happened during that period of time. Serious stuff, not kid stuff, like serious stuff. And then I got to deal with all this stuff too. The other thing is, you're picking up the most intense energy from where you're going, like where the environments you're going in. High school, oh my God. high schools, literally prisons, insane asylums. Like, this is the realm of energy that high schools are in. Obviously, that depends on your high school, but when you have that kind of environment where there's a lot of depression, there's so much insecurity, there's like all the bickering and weird politics, and just, it's a shit show. It was very, very hard for me. And then that was where things got super, super difficult and kind of went left for me. It was all very, very overwhelming. I did not really know what was going on. I was really grappling with all my own life stuff, and then I would have all of this psychic stuff coming through, all this information about people that I don't want. I don't want it. I don't want to know it. And also, there's like this force field around me that says, tell me everything. And people would just tell me things so much, like I'm already picking up all the energy. And then when they talk about it, activates it more. And so I'm like literally like getting dragged into their energy and dragged into their energy and dragged here and there. And I'm just like, what the hell? I didn't know that this was such a separate experience. Like I said, because my empathic abilities were the first to really come through really, really strong. And we don't talk about that. So I didn't know that this wasn't everybody else's experience. And I thought that everybody else, and to a degree, this is actually what's happening, is we are all masking our emotions, our emotional experience, because we're taught to portray a certain thing. And so I just assumed everybody else is having just as hard of a time with all their psychic stuff, but I just really suck at dealing with it. I had no idea nobody else, not nobody else, but like nobody else is having this situation. And I think I really had to start looking at it when I got to a point with, like, in my teen years, where it was like mental health issues, substance issues, because you're trying to just like survive at this point. You're just trying to survive. Like, all this stuff, you don't know what to do with it. It doesn't go away. You can't go away from it. So what the hell are you gonna do? Can't figure it out. Don't know anything. At this point, information was very sparse. I had been very interested in magic and mysticism and things like this growing up. There was not a lot of information. And what you did find, you didn't know if it was credible. There was no sense of credibility within this realm of information. Who's the trusted source? Nowadays, we've had people come through, but back then, when I was a kid, at least what was accessible to me, I did not know. So it was basically like being in this trap of like feeling like you're going crazy, having other people tell you you're crazy, and then having God tell you, no, you're actually like many steps ahead of what other people can understand. And this is all happening for a very, very important reason, which is a horrible thing to consistently be told by one's heavenly Father. When you are going through really tough times and like for long periods, like years, you know, like high school, young adulthood, really dark, really tough, And then, due to the law of attraction, the more difficult it became and the harder experiences that came into my life, the more I attracted that into my life because, of course, I'm focused on it. It's intense. And it gets more intense, and it gets more intense, and it gets rougher and harder and crazier and scarier. And the stories that I could tell you, you would not believe. And I got literally thousands of them. It was a very, very isolating experience. It was a very rough time for me. I, started to, when you get in a really dark place, like I've always been a very spiritual person. Like I said, I've been talking to God since I was 5. As these more difficult things happened in my life, basically, I started to become estranged from God because due to resentment. After my parents split up, I was very, 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 very close with my father. And then he and I, and our family were separated. And so, basically, I was very angry about that. I was very upset about it. I was like, but God, you love me. How could you do this to me? Of all the things in the world, I could handle anything but that. Literally anything. Why did you gotta go take my daddy away? Because I know that there's a reason for everything. So I know that it's not just my father's fault or my mother's fault, even though I was angry with both of them. I was much more angry with God. This is not I thought we were homies and you're gonna do me like this. And so even though I knew that there was a reason for it, even though I, have faith and trusted God and love God and have this really tight relationship, I got very pouty for years. And then, so the more resentment I had, the more distance there was, the less I was really listening to what was coming through. And so the less I was letting that guide me where I should be, the more I was where I shouldn't be. And again, the law of attraction. So further and further and deeper and deeper. And then once you get to your furthest point away from God that you can stand to be, and that actually is different for everybody, you will come back to the light. Period. You literally just cannot survive. And this is the point of suicide. A lot of people, they don't head back into the light, or they give up on the way, and that's the suicide option. I was, happy to take that option a number of times and was, unable to follow through with that interventions, and everything happens for a reason, obviously. But yeah, it's a really rough thing to go through, and that was the hardest point of this journey for me of being psychic. Is I feel like at that time I just didn't know anything about it except what I was going through. So although God was trying to feed all these tools into my life, like meditation and this and that actually are the keys to being able to live as a psychic and not be a complete basket case. Excuse me. So once you reach that 0 point, that dark point, you got to come back. And that's when my psychic abilities started switching back on. I remember, so during this process of coming to understand that I'm psychic also, it's like, it was a hard process of like wanting to understand more, and then finding out that I was trying to learn to do something I've been doing all my life. That was really hard because I'm like desperate for information. Help me understand, help me deal with this, control it, understand it. Like, where are the resources? I can't be the only person. I know that for a fact. Like, I literally am psychic. I know that. Where is everybody? And so the more I began to ask that, the more I started to meet people and would share what they knew. And generally, gradually, this experience of enlightenment is happening. So what it's been like for me is like having certain things illuminated. But then the more I connected with others, the more that light was like spread out so I can really see what's going on. Yeah, so once you have that information, it's still a process. It's not like someone's going to give you a big encyclopedia of this is what it's like being psychic. So if this ever happens, do this. Don't ever do that. I'm not going to even tell you what never to do, but yeah, it's still a process. You find an amazing book. Okay, that's given you one piece of the puzzle. You meet somebody who shares their experiences. That's another part of the puzzle. Like, you just gotta piece it together. This has been my experience. And I feel like I always knew that at some point I was gonna be called to present this puzzle that I've been collecting all these pieces for my entire effing life, to help other people so they don't have to go through all the drama. Oh, and it was dramatic. It was dramatic. So at this time, I actually just had a huge opening of the funnel just last year, and for me it opened up to a level that was completely overwhelming, very scary. Actually, like the last time it opened up like that, it wasn't for like a year. It was like just a moment, and it was scary and overwhelming, and then I got like plunged into it for like a year, and it was traumatizing, to be honest with you, to have such like epic, huge experiences that you really can't talk to anybody else about because they have no capacity to relate. If you've ever spoken to somebody about something that was really a big deal for you, who gave you like no reaction, like I don't know what to say to that. Like, that is kind of what you're faced with in these situations of like, who can I talk to who's not going to be like, I just don't know what to say to that, you know? Some of the experiences you have as a psychic are so outlandish, are so far outside of the shared reality. So in this context of the Enlightenment analogy, the shared reality is what is illuminated for everyone, which is not a lot. We're all illuminated in different ways in different areas, but together what we all agree is like what we can all see, very little. was I saying? Sorry, I got sidetracked. Dang it, I can't really remember what I was saying. Something about the funnel opening up in a big way. And yeah, so that's been this huge like dam bursting, pushing me forward. I literally, going back to when I was 5, I do remember asking God, like, what's the plan? What's your plan for me? I have a feeling there's a big plan. Like, there's a big something. And there's a whole thing that's gonna happen to make a thing happen. What's gonna happen to make the thing happen, and what's the thing? I was given a vision of myself as a grown woman standing on a mountain beside the ocean. There was a man beside me, behind me. Couldn't see him, but I just knew that was like my husband. I was looking down into this, like, not a valley, but it was like not cleared land, but kind of flat land down there, and it was just like tons of people. And that message was a message to me that I understood as kind of like shepherd and flock. And one day, God was going to ask me to offer something to a group of people. And I was like, okay. Well, also as a kid, your perception of age is a bit whacked out. I was like, okay, I look really old, so that's not going to happen for a long time. So, cool, one day. What's the thing to get there? And he told me I was going to suffer in a very extreme way for a long period of time, and that then it was going to be basically smooth sailing. And I was like, but what's the suffering about? Like, we're so cool though. I love you. I love life. I'm about everything. Why? It doesn't sound fun. I want to be all like Janet Jackson and like, can't that be my life? And the message that came through for me was like, you need to show people how strong, or how the strength of a bond with God how powerful that can be. I'm going to put you in some awful, awful, terrible situations, and it's going to be okay because I'm right there with you. I'm going to bring you out of everything, but I'm going to keep putting you back into terror. Like, you're going to go through it bad. And I was a cocky little thing, and I was like, I love God. I'm a badass. Bring it on. I'd like to see anyone, burst my bubble, try and burst my bubble. I actually kept that. I kept that for a long time. It took a lot to break that down. Many years of a lot. But it did happen. That dark point that I was talking about earlier. But then the sun will come out. Then you go back. And that's the hard part. When you're at your lowest, darkest point and you feel like you have dug a hole to China, and you're just like looking up, like there's no way I can get myself out of this. I got myself too deep. Too deep. Like, not even God can get me out. Like, how could God ever even look at me the same way? I'm so, like, you know, impure. All the things I've done, all the, you know, days I didn't get on my knees and pray, all of the things I felt ashamed and guilty about in allowing my relationship with God to break down. Why should, like, God love me or shine his light on me or reach out to me or lift me up or bless me with anything? And honestly, I just had to follow my faith. And it's led me here, and it has led me out of the darkest of times, the darkest. It has allowed me to grow and develop and bloom in many ways, and it has allowed me to give the benefit of my experience, which is vast in the ways of adversity, and how choosing into the light, actively choosing a relationship with divine, there's nothing that can't be overcome or resolved with that. There's nothing that can't be achieved or attained with that. That is in alignment with your absolute ultimate well-being and happiness. And I feel like this has more been a video about how I came to make this video, but I feel like there's some important aspects in there too. So I'm going to do a follow-up video where I'm going to get more into like different experiences, like different practices that opened up my psychic abilities, like psychic windows really, where things just started streaming in. Astrological alignments, how that opens up like energetic portals, visions, astral projections, Akashic records, flashbacks, downloads, channeled messages, different dimensions, deities, and communicating with the other side. Check you out then. It's gonna get interesting, way off the beaten trail, but it apparently is time. And so here I go, sharing the messages, y'all. Don't shoot the messenger. Thanks for watching the video, you guys. Yeah, do like and subscribe if you want to catch the notification for that next video too. Also, obviously, there's going to be a lot more content coming of this nature. Tarot readings, channel messages, all kinds of things. So I really, really look forward to it. Actually, it's time. All right. See you then.